The daily word for today, Sunday, March 22nd, 2020, is power. I take dominion over my thoughts, words, and actions. The power of God protects me. Today I hear with renewed understanding the line from James Dillett Freeman's prayer for protection. In a growing awareness of oneness with my source, I realize that the power of God works through me and as me, rather than simply in me and for me. I embody divine power by choosing words that affirm the truth that I am a spiritual being as I navigate the valleys and peaks of my human experience. By expressing my power, I am claiming dominion over my words and thoughts. I affirm statements of truth while releasing negative thoughts and ideas. I think and speak with authority of my Christ presence. And the quote today is from 2 Timothy verse 1, chapter 7. For God did not give us spirit of cowardice, but rather a spirit of power and love and self-discipline. Now I invite you to just get ready for the meditation. Go ahead and find a comfortable sitting arrangement, whatever works for you, and start to take those wonderful breathing opportunities. Breathe in and breathe out slowly. Really begin to center yourself in this moment, in this time. And as you become still, begin to focus your awareness on your breath. The gentle rising and falling. And now gently place your hand on your heart, and then just pause for a few breaths. And then let your inhales and your exhales be relaxed and natural as you feel the rise and fall of your chest. And now as you breathe, begin to notice the sensation of your heartbeat and feel the warmth from within. And now affirm for yourself, I am strong and healthy. I am strong and healthy. I am strong and healthy. And now say to yourself silently, I am peaceful, safe, and content. I am peaceful, safe, and content. I am peaceful, safe, and content. Now as we enter into this time of silence, consider for yourself what you need to hear. And then repeat that silently to yourself as we go within.
So good morning, everybody. Welcome to Unity of Orange County, and welcome to this Sunday service. And so I'm grateful to be here, and I take this opportunity to reconnect virtually with everybody out there in YouTube land. Welcome. So this past week, I have had a big challenge in terms of not just my own spiritual reset button, which is what I'm talking about, but my whole self being reset. And what I am finding out from what's going on with our nation, with our world, with this coronavirus, COVID-19, what it has done is put out a call to all of us. Literally, figuratively, and literally, we are called within. Literally, we are within the walls of our homes, within the walls of our places of work. So we are honoring that call very well. The authorities tell us what to do, and we obey them. We keep our distance, and we do our social, for lack of a better word, isolation. And so when we do that, I have to be very careful that I don't completely lock myself off. And so I'm going to talk to you today about my experience with this new phenomena that's going on, and some of the things that have come to me and how I can move through this experience with a lot more grace and ease. And so, first of all, I'm going to read something that I found from Marianne Williamson. And what she says is, all over the world, people are slowing down and reflecting. All over the world, people are looking at their neighbors in a new way. All over the world, people are waking up to a new reality, to how big we really are, how little control we seemingly do not have, and to what really matters to us. So we pray and we remember that yes, there is fear, but there does not have to be hate. Yes, there is isolation, but there does not have to be loneliness. Yes, there is panic, but there does not have to be meanness. Yes, there is sickness, but there does not have to be disease of the soul. And yes, there's even death. But there can always be a rebirth. And that part of it is really, really grasped at my soul, because now I recognize how I can be the best me I can be through this situation is paying attention to the reset buttons, the spiritual growth. And so when this whole virus came about, I felt pretty confident in myself. I felt confident in my spiritual life. I was pretty comfortable. And then the rules began to set in. Certain things that were out of my control. Now, no, I cannot control the circumstances of this particular phenomena that's just sweeping the world. But what I can do is be in control of how I am with it, how I interact with myself, how I interact with life, and how I can deal with this experience in a way that is nurturing, that is loving, that is caring, not just for myself, but for the planet as a whole. With my own spiritual rebirth, I'm looking at all of that. So I took a look at what I was being called into with this social isolation. I could be more neighborly, which I see that all the time. I can be helpful, which I am doing all the time. I can be compassionate, and I do that all the time. I know what I can do, and I believe for me, when I started seeing all of the regulations, I went into fear. And the way I recognized that I was in a state of fear is that nothing really worked for me. My prayers didn't work the way I felt like my prayers didn't work. My affirmations were on the surface. I know all of that. And I tried to do it, and yet I wasn't moving. And yet, I was still affected by the social isolation. I was affected deeply by the social distance. I was affected, and still am affected deeply, that I can't go out into the world and socialize the way I did before. And so, my calling, my spiritual reset button is causing me to be awake, being awake, not a physical awakeness, but a spiritual awakening. Being awakened to the fact that we are not in this alone. I am not in this alone. None of us are in this alone. We are a spiritual people. We are a sentient being. We have within us everything that we need to get through this. Not just get through it, but get through it and come out on the other side being whole, perfect, and complete, which is actually what we are. We have a spiritual blueprint, a spiritual blueprint. There is a pattern of perfection in each and every one of us, and we were born into that pattern of perfection within us, and we also can heal back into that place within us. And so my spiritual reset button is causing me to be aware of that. And the awareness that I'm talking about is an awareness, that spiritual rebirth, that how can I take compassion to a different level? How can I take being helpful to a different level? And I want to share an experience with you. A couple of weeks back, one of my neighbors, who's an elderly woman, had been bedridden, and her doors were shut, and I kept hearing this loud noise. It sounded like, I live in Laguna Woods, so we're like a village, and we have lots of wildlife. So the sound that I heard, I thought it was a coyote, and that's what it sounded like. And I kept looking around, I didn't see anything. So a handyman came and knocked on the door, and he said the neighbor had fallen on the floor. And that was the noise that I heard. And so I opened up I have a key to her house, so I went in and I saw her laying on the floor, and she was so scared, and she was so afraid. And so what I did, I called the paramedics, and what I did, she was laying on the floor, so I laid down on the floor with her, and being as compassionate as I could possibly be with her. She had a little dog, so I put the little dog on her lap, and I said, "This is your dog here. He's right here with you. He's safe and being taken care of. I'm also calling your daughter, and I'm letting her know that you've fallen and that the emergency people are here and they're going to take you to the hospital." And I stayed with her. I laid on the floor with her until the rescue people got there, until they took her away. And as I reflect back on that experience, that was an opportunity for me to be more spiritually deepened, for lack of a better word. So we have all of these opportunities all around us. When people are reacting out of fear, there is a level of compassion that I know that I can have for them that will keep me out of the tendency to judge. And I recognize my tendency to judge when I saw all of the shelves in the grocery store empty. I recognize my need to go deeper with my compassion when I go to the store and I see people hoarding stuff. I see a lot of stuff that there have been times when I would immediately go to judgment. Why are they buying all the toilet paper? Who buys 2 carts of toilet paper? Who buys toilet paper so that nobody else has enough? Who buys all the water? Who does that? And I realize a person that is acting from fear. And I know because I have been fearful, and when we act, when we're driven by fear, we can't operate in our sound mind. Fear and sound mind just don't go together. So how do we do a spiritual reset when all around us, and I'm saying us, but I'm basically talking to me, how do I get my spiritual reset when all around me there's stuff just rallying for my attention? There's the fear that there may not be enough food. Well, clearly I haven't lost any weight, so I haven't lost any pounds. So I have not been affected by the food shortage. So there are these things. I lost my train of thought with that. I was trying to be funny. So where do I go with this? Where do I go with my fear when I can't go anyplace? I know all the prayers. I don't know all the prayers, but I know the principles of prayer. So I get in touch with my principles. And this is part of my reset, is to reconnect with the spiritual principles that I already know about and take them a little bit deeper, because clearly for me, I'm still evolving with this situation. I'm still watching it. I'm still learning. And so I have to make sure that I don't just reset and lock myself out. So in the New Thought movement, unity, religious science, science of mind, we have these principles that we live by. And one of them is, God really is all there is. And if we're made in the image and likeness of God, where do I connect with my God in this time of fear? How can I reset so that when I go into prayer, when I decide to pray, that I'm praying with some principles that are going to allow me to heal, to have my own spiritual rebirth, to have my spiritual reset button reset. So one of the principles is God is all there is. So where is God in the fear? Where is God in the panic? Where is God in the sense of lack and limitation? Where is God in all of this? Well, God is right. God is all there is. And my task is to connect with my relationship with God, knowing that this is an all-powerful God, a God that's all-loving. And so my task is to connect with that. And then once I make that connection, how am I going to interact with God, who is all-powerful, all-knowing, everywhere present? So what do I do with this in the face of this COVID-19 virus? Well, the first thing I had to do was decide not to blame God for this. If I blame God for this situation, then I have just deleted my reset button. So what I can do is find the quality of God in this situation. And all around me, I see these qualities of God. I see people helping each other. I see people loving each other. I see people calling their neighbors on the phone and seeing if they need anything. There is the God. And that aspect of God is always there. And as I said earlier, we may not always be in control of the circumstances around us, but we can control how we view the circumstances around us, how we are in those circumstances. So when I talked earlier about generous, so generous and more generous. So I have to go deeper with my generosity. I have to go deeper than checking on my neighbors. I have to be generous with the planet Earth. How am I shutting myself off from Earth? Or how can I be more generous with the planet? And we do stuff like recycle, we do stuff like not littering, but I believe that we're called to a deeper level, something much deeper than we can see with our human eye, something deeper than we can hear with our physical ears, something deeper than what we can touch with our hands. There is something here, and we're being called to do it. We're called to recognize it. And one of the really strong symbols of the necessity for us to go deep within is the fact that the outside world is literally forcing us to come within, is forcing us to look within. Since I have been abiding by the rules and stuff, I stay home as much as I can. And there are things that I could be doing in my home. I look in my drawer in my bathroom, and I've said, well, I've been saying I'm going to clean this cabinet drawer for 5 years now. And so there are all these things that we can do. And so the way I look at stuff like that is, so if there's clutter there, and cleaning out that clutter will make will allow me to see what's there and allow me to get rid of what I don't need. And so the same principle applies in mind. If I've got old habits, old belief systems, a lot of stuff that's clogging up my mentality, then I won't see what God has available. I won't see what is mine to do. I won't hear that still small voice because of the clutter. So when we're talking about spiritual reset button, these are the kinds of things that I am working with on my own. And I'll go through a few of those with you. And like I said, I'm learning a new way of living, a new way of appreciating social isolation, social what's that word? Distance, social distance. So how can I do that? How can I use this situation and become a better, healthier me? So I decided what I would do was use the spiritual practices that we teach in this movement. And I've got a whole bunch of them here. And what I'm going to do is talk about a couple of those, but I'm going to start with a more difficult one first. This is the one that I find people have the most difficulty with. And oftentimes when I do group work or when I do individual counseling, I start with forgiveness. And it's been my experience, everybody says, and I used to say it as well, I've done the forgiveness work. I have nobody else to forgive. And so I say, well, think about, if you have nothing to forgive, think about the politicians. Think about the people that are running the world. Think about, and if you're okay with that, that's good. If you're not, then that's an opportunity for forgiveness. Think about people that may not be aware of littering, people throwing trash on the streets. Well, the planet has to deal with this. And for me, unless we can forgive, we are not going to be totally free. We're not going to have that spiritual rebirth that our text talks so much about. So forgiveness can come in so many ways. You can write a letter to someone. Find someone that you have aught against or with, and write them a letter of forgiveness. You don't have to mail it or anything. You can just tear it up. But write that letter of forgiveness. I wrote a letter to myself once. And I said, I wrote it to my body, and I said, "Dear body, thank you for being the vehicle by which I move around." And I thanked my body for being healthy. And I also said, those areas where I have been less than loving toward you, please forgive me. Those times when I may have had unhealthy habits that I indulged in that damaged you, please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. There is a prayer, it's a Native American Hawaiian prayer, and it was written by a psychiatrist who helped mental patients recovery. And the poem is called Ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono. And what it says is, it says, "I am sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you." And you repeat that over and over again. Please forgive me. I love you. I'm sorry. Thank you. And someone that you may be angry with or upset with, and you can't talk to them, write them a letter. Write that prayer. I love you. I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. For those times when I have abused the planet, I beg forgiveness from the planet. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I love you. Thank you. So something as simple as that. To begin the process of forgiveness is the process of healing. And if you can't think of anyone that needs forgiven, forgive them anyway. Forgive yourself for not being able to forgive someone else. So make it easy. And then as we do forgiveness, I don't believe there's ever a there with forgiveness. There's always an opportunity to forgive. And so for now, forgiveness I think is a very, very powerful tool that we can have in our toolbox. Another one of the reset buttons has to do with, or it's a spiritual practice, and that is prayer. prayer. And prayer is praying or going within, connecting with your source. And whatever that source might be, we call it universal intelligence, we call it divine mind, we call it God. But there is that connection, and once we make that connection, then we are able to speak, to communicate with our higher power. And so I found a couple of prayers on the internet because in the New Thought movement, we don't see God as a he or she. We see God as a presence, and everybody sees it different. Sometimes we call it God, sometimes we call it universal intelligence. When I grew up, we called it Lord. So I found this prayer that helped me a lot in terms of going deeper. And some of the words are a little bit different than the affirmative prayer that we talk about. But it touched my soul, and I'd like to share that with you. And it says, Lord, I long for those moments early in my faith when I felt your closeness, your joy, your energy, and zest for life. I confess that the daily grind has grown down my passion for you. I confess that I allow the cares of the world to choke out the joy of your gospel. Lord, turn my heart toward you again. Fix my eyes on you. Fix my heart on you. Help me to have a reset in my faith and in my life. Starting today, starting right now, please God, renew my heart, renew my life for you and your ways. Help me to see the daily routines of life as moments of gracefully submitting to your will. Thank you for being the Lord of my life. Now, that doesn't use a lot of the affirmative words that we use in the New Thought movement, but it touched my soul. It allowed me to go deeper. And then another one is, God is my help in every need. God does my every hunger feeds. God walks beside me, guides my way through every moment of this day. I now am wise. I now am true, patient and kind, and loving too. Through Christ, the truth that is in me, God is my health. I can't be sick. God is my strength, unfailing, quick. God is my all. I know no fear. Since God and love and truth are here. So when I read words like this, it takes me out of my human mind and allows my spirit to receive the nourishment that it needs so that that reset button is always available to us. And we come out of these kinds of experiences better human beings, better loving beings, better kind beings. And another thing that we can do, that we can have as part of our spiritual practice, is going for a walk in nature. Looking at the birds, the squirrels. There's a lot of that. There's a freedom in nature that sometimes we inhibit with our human tendencies. But nature is so uninhibited. And so as you walk around during these times and you can get out in nature, appreciate the birds. Appreciate all of nature, the grass. Its appreciation and gratitude is just wonderful. One of the things that I do, another thing that I do is in connecting with nature is I connect with the earth. I take my shoes off and I find earth, I find the dirt, and I walk in the dirt. I oftentimes will go to the beach and take my shoes off and walk in the beach on the sand. There's something in nature that's uninhibited, and there's something about us as human beings that responds to nature in a way that sometimes our human mind may not understand it, but connecting with nature. When I'm connected with nature, then I am not in fear, because there is no fear in nature. When I'm connected with nature, there is no lack and limitation because the nature is so abundant. So I do offer that as another suggestion. Another suggestion that I have that's working for me is gratitude. Now, this is not a new practice for me, and it's probably not a new practice for you out there as well. But one of the things that I am doing now, and I went back through some of my gratitude journals, and I didn't see that. With all of the chaos, seemingly chaos going on around us, there is a ground force, and I call it a ground force, people that are doing the work so that we can feel safe, so I can feel safe. There are people that are stocking those shelves in the grocery store, and I can be grateful for those. I can be grateful, and I am grateful for the people that are working on vaccines, the people that are working on something to stop the spread of this virus. So I can be grateful for the scientists and the drug companies that are trying to make vaccinations. Great gratitude for the healthcare workers. Even if you can't go to your doctor right now, I wrote a letter to one of my providers last night, and I thanked them for still being out there. The doctor's offices are still open. The grocery stores are still open. The banks are still open. There are a lot of what is required for our survival, or we think is necessity for our survival. These are human beings out there putting putting our safety and our security first. And so I have deep gratitude for all the people. Some organizations are laying people off. They're just not allowing people to come in. And so there are people that wake up every single day and do their job so that I can live the life that I'm living, so that I can move around, so that I don't have to be fearful, so that I don't have to hoard, so that I can answer that call that calls me to go deeper. Another one is doing some reading, and I got this from Marianne Williamson, and she said that poetry is a good thing to read during these times because poetry has a way about it that we can't really grasp our human mind around, but when we're in the process of reading poetry, we tend to lose ourselves. And for me, that's a good thing, losing that old self, losing that judgmental self. So reading some poetry is another really, really good tool to have in your toolbox. Spiritual readings are also very, very calming for me. And as I was listening to Marianne Williamson, she shared a story about her sister who was dying of cancer. And her sister every day would journal. She wrote in her journal every day. And nobody ever read it because they respected her privacy. And when she passed away, she was reading her journal, and she wrote the same thing every day. She wrote the 23rd Psalm every day. So every morning or whenever she, in her journal, different day, Psalm 23, different day, Psalm 23. And they were astonished that that's all she wrote every single day. And what they realized was it brought her comfort. And those are the things that we have to do now to bring us comfort. Find something spiritual to read, even if it's not spiritual. I love the Bible, and I love the teachings in the Bible. And so the 23rd Psalm works really, really well for me. It's been around for a long time. It's been through the ages, and it's used over and over again. So I'm just going to read the 23rd Psalm to you really quickly. And if you want to, you can just make this a meditation for you. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valleys of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And so I'd like to close in by saying, however way you find yourself being with the situation at hand right now, if there is an opportunity to hit that spiritual reset button, watch out. If you hit that spiritual reset button and you are not watching out, something amazing might happen to you. You might be that loving person, even more loving than you ever thought you would be, even more kinder than you ever thought you would be, even more generous than you ever thought you would be. And you see, this happens when we find something to bring us back to home, which is our center. And I'd like to close with a meditation from, and I'm going to read this from one of the Science of Mind textbooks, and it was written by Dr. Ernest Holmes. And this meditation basically includes everybody. And it uses words that doesn't leave people out. And it's just called a meditation. I know there's a power for good which is responding to me and bringing into my experience everything that is necessary to my unfoldment, to my happiness, to my peace, to my health, and to my success. I know there's a power for good that enables me to help others and bless the world. So I say quietly to myself, there is one life, that life is God. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. It flows through me, circulating in me. I am one with its rhythm. My heart beats with the pulsation of the universe. In serenity, in peace, and in joy, my whole physical being is animated by divine spirit. And if there's anything in it that does not belong, it is cast out because there's one perfect life in me now. And I say to myself, I am daily guided so that I shall know what to do under every circumstance and every situation. Realizing that I am one with all people, I affirm there is a silent power flowing through me and them, which blesses and heals and prospers and makes happy and glad their pathway. And realizing that the world is made up of people like myself, I bless the world and affirm that it shall come under the divine governance of good, under the divine providence of love, and under the divine leadership of supreme intelligence. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Namaste.